Introduce themselves. My name is Cindy Davis, and I'll be chairing this committee meeting, and we welcome you. And let's go ahead and have Vice Chair Kelly next.
Yes, I'm Cole Kelly. I represent District 12 and excited and happy to be with you this morning.
Great, thank you. Member Booth?
I'm Randy Booth, representing District 13, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to dive into finance.
And
I'm going to tease you just a little bit, Chair Davis. Randy and our hair is wet too. You just can't tell as much.
Excellent.
And Scott.
And Scott. Yeah, Scott looking good.
Excellent. Well, I'll be in the same club today. Chair Hymas.
Yeah, thank you. Matt Hymas. I represent District 10. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Hey, I'm Member Bogus. I represent Taylorsville, Kearns, and West Jordan. Thanks so much, Chair Davis.
Thanks everybody for being here today. We're going to jump right in because we're actually going to try to end by 11:45 if possible. If not, we will do the work and be thorough, but if we can also be efficient, then that would be great. We have first up, we have staff introductions. Looks like we have Kathy Olson and Kelly. Is it Tyrell? Deputy Jones, help us.
Yes,
You're
Kathy
muted.
Olson and Kelly Tyrell.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathy. Or we can start with Kelly. If Kathy isn't.
I'm not seeing her on, so I just text her to make sure she got the link.
Oh,
So
okay. Is Kelly on?
Yeah, I see
Kelly's on.
Let's start with Kelly.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Tyrell. I'm the Support Services Coordinator for the IT department, and probably if it's not development or operations, I have my finger in the pie somewhere. And I support Jared and the rest of the IT team. Jared said I was supposed to say something personal. I enjoy reading and crafts and hanging out with my husband and my family.
Thank you so much.
Reading and crafts, is that what you said?
Crafts.
Oh, crafts. I'm like, oh, I thought you were rolling the dice at the crafts table. My bad. I was getting excited.
Yeah, not so good at that.
Crafts is fun too. Yeah.
It is a lot less. Well, it's really not that less expensive.
I'm sure it is.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. We appreciate that. And yeah, when we asked for something personal, it wasn't like too personal, but yeah, something we wouldn't otherwise get to know about you if we were just interacting in the workplace. So thanks for sharing that. And thanks for all the work you do for USBE.
Thank you.
And do we have Kathy online yet?
I don't see her yet, ma'am. So
okay, if she pops on, let's put her in. Let's go ahead and move. We don't have any requests for public comment today. So let's go to action 2.2, funding for charter school students with disabilities on an IEP, R277-479. And let's go and head and turn the time over. It looks like we've got Ben and Dale both here. Who wanted to take the lead on that one?
Chair Davis, this is Dale Frost. I can take the lead on that.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay, good morning, Chair, members of the committee, Dale Frost, Minimum School Program Administrator. Ben said that he had to be in law and licensing, and so he asked me to take lead on this. I have a presentation and I have the rule and I have a spreadsheet. My thought is to start with the presentation, but would you like to go over the rule changes first? Which would you prefer?
The rule changes are shorter than the presentation.
Correct.
So let's do a quick glance at the rule changes and then go through the presentation so that we can anchor the information from the presentation to the rule change.
Great. So that's what I will do. so maybe I can ask Sam or others to monitor the chat. Members, please, I can't see hands, so just let me know. So this is the
Okay.
draft rule that's in backup. Again, the purpose of 479 is to deal with special education funding scenarios for.
Yeah, we're just seeing your, sorry, we're just
Am I
seeing your
sharing the wrong
desktop.
screen?
Yeah.
Oh, are you just seeing a redwood forest?
Yes, but it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
but it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I got lost in it there for a while. So.
Okay, well, that's a lot more serene. Can we just do that?
Yeah.
Now can you see it? I was sharing
Yes.
my other screen.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's my brain is almost woken up. So 479, the purpose in the past, this will change slightly with these changes because they will apply to all charter schools. But in the past, 479 has only applied to new and expanding charter schools. Statute is relatively clear on special education funding, especially on the SPED add-on formula, but it requires average daily membership for multiple years. And we don't have average daily membership for a brand new charter school. You don't have multiple years of average daily membership until like year 3 and 4 for a charter school. So what do you do in the meantime is has been the purpose of the rule. We talked about this in November, that there were going to be significant reductions to certain expanding charter school funds. And so we're coming back to propose some overarching changes and then some smaller technical changes that affect new and expanding charter schools. So the changes begin in section 3 here. So in line 76 through 78, this is the language for new and expanding charter schools funding in the SPED add-on formula in their second year of operation. So in the first year of operation up here in 71, 72, the rule is staying the same, that you're truing up to their actual number of students, their December 1 count. And the existing rule said to use the prior year ADM for new and expanding charter schools in their second year. For the most part, that works, but we had a request from Elevated Charter School, and it is possible for especially new charter schools to have major fluctuations in their special education population. Their ADM in year 1 was 17, so they had 17 full-time equivalent students, and they had 48 students on their current year December 1 count. It's really difficult to fund the needs of 48 students with 17 WPUs essentially. So what they're asking for here was that, and it's kind of a specialized case, but you get either the greater of the ADM count from the prior year or the actual number of students reported on the December 1 count. So that's the first change. So the second change here, just technical change on changing percentage. There was to the word percent, there's no actual change there. There was a lot of old language that wasn't removed, that was no longer necessary. There's a small change on 109. Our practice has been, when we don't have any data points really, we use 10% of the projected enrollments. For whatever reason, we were using 0.014 or 14% for the SPED extended school year program. We're changing that to 10 to just align, so it's 10% across the board, so that it's a little bit more, there's not multiple multipliers. Okay, and then lines 144 through 146, we're going to go, the main part of the addition of the rule, the main part of the presentation relates to the section 4 here. but we do need to have a section here that doesn't artificially reduce folks' budgets otherwise. And we also need these caps to apply even for new and expanding charter schools. And so what this is saying is that basically you follow what is above unless you're going to exceed these caps for new and expanding charter schools. We don't want to provide that scenario just because they're a new and expanding charter school, kind of the reverse of the issue we've been dealing with.
Dale, can I
yes.
stop you for a minute? Chair Hymas has a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Hey, Dale, if you look back at 109, the numbers don't. I mean, you said 14%, but it looks more like it was 1.4%, which if it's 0.014, and now we're taking it to 0.1.
Oh, you're right. 14% would be 0.14.
So is that just a typo, or is it that extreme?
No. I apologize there. I think there was so many different pieces and parts to this. Good catch.
So I can see
yes.
your wheels turning, and I don't know if we just need to
We
pause
probably
on
need
this
to
rule, or if you
notwithstand that
have.
change. I apologize, Chair. So no, good catch. That wasn't 14%. That's 1.4%. And that's what's been used here in the past. Good catch though. That probably should not be changed
So
10%.
if you have while you continue on, I don't know if you have other people like, okay, here's what needs to happen.
Could it be
Whatever
like
needs to
1.5
happen
or something? Could it be like 1.5 or something? Or I don't know.
I can. What I'd recommend here is we just keep with the existing language. The thought process here was that, I think I was very focused on the SPED add-on. I apologize here. And I saw that number and immediately thought 14% and it should be 10. The intention was not to go to 1.4 to 10.
So let's keep it then. And I don't know if that requires an amendment. We haven't amended anything, but let's keep it as is if I'm hearing correctly. And then if we need to address it at another time, we can.
So what was the original 0.014?
1.4%
is the accurate original?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd recommend with that context to keep it as is, or to change it to, in language to 1.4%. But yeah, the intention was not to increase that amount there dramatically. Okay, good catch, Chair. Anything else, board members? Okay, so then over here, this is the main section here. This applies to all charter schools, which is different than the rest of the rule. And 53F2 307 is the SPED add-on formula in code. We also notwithstand charter schools with a prevalence rate of 60%. That only applies to Spectrum Academy. We can talk more about why Spectrum Academy was not included in these initial recommendations. But basically what this is meant to do is to, over time, ratchet down that ratio that you can't have more than 2.41, then down to 2.06, all the way down to 1.35. And what that means is that you can't have more than 1.35 SPED add-on WPUs compared to your prior ADM. And why did we choose 1.35 as the target? That's because that's the high range of districts who don't have this new and expanding charter school issue. So we're basically ratcheting down to bring all charter schools at least within the range of school districts. So I'll get more into this, but really the intention was, the main purpose of the change is to talk about this, to address this longstanding issue that we've discovered, that this rule caused over 15 plus years, but to do it in a way that isn't devastating to special education programs across the state. And then we do have that small change to address an issue similar to elevated charter school. And yes, I would recommend that we not include the number change on line 94. Nope, 109, excuse me. So hopefully that gives you some context. I was going to jump into the presentation now. Does that work for you, Chair?
Yeah, but just tell me, what was the impetus to make the number change in the first place on that line?
We're talking about 109.
Yeah,
It was merely me.
just a language.
Yeah. See, well, first I wanted to say, let's not have, some things in decimals and some things in
Decimals
percent.
in words.
Um,
Got it.
And then I saw that and interpreted that as 14%. And I said, why are we using, that 14%? Can we just use everything at 10%? I take full responsibility for that.
We have 10% on 94 also. That's accurate though, right?
Yes, you can see here, I'll show you here that 10% has been the practice. You can see in 68 through 70. This is what we use kind of standard for the initial WPUs when we only have projections. So you can see here that we use 10% times the estimated enrollment for the SPED add-on. Same thing for impact aid. And so the thought process was we should do the same thing for extended school year. But
Well, personally, I like it. I think it's more consistent to keep the language more consistent throughout the rule, but we could just keep it
I have not
accurate.
modeled. I have not modeled bringing, essentially an 8-fold increase in that, rather than a small decrease. But yeah.
But just the language. Anyway, we can, as long as the amount is accurate. But we can, Chair Hymas has a question, Dale, if that's okay. Go ahead, Chair.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, and this might be more directed to you, Chair Davis, if we are to, are we just going to put this back and then have a vote? Do we need to make a motion? What do you want to do to make sure that this doesn't just slide through?
On 109, you want to fix 109 right now? We can do that.
I don't think I don't necessarily think it needs a motion because staff. I don't want to say, yeah, we sent this through.
Yeah.
Just wondering what your thoughts were before I don't want to do it accidentally.
Personally, I think we just make the language consistent and the numbers accurate and leave that to staff to do that when it comes out. Unless there's, objection. Okay. Is there objection to that? And we can make sure, we keep double check it again when it comes back out to full board next month.
So Dell,
I don't see any hands. Oh, Cole, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Dell, are you saying that we keep it at 0.014, or are you saying we go to 10%?
What I'm saying is in a subsequent draft, to not make an actual change to the number, have it read 1.4%.
Right.
Which is 0.014.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Vice Chair Kelly.
Okay. Thanks.
So without objection, let's go ahead and plan on that change coming out. That little correction. Thank you.
And again, I mean, SPED formulas, we have to manage 6 of them amongst 30 other programs, and I apologize for missing that. We'll also have the opportunity here. This is just one of the scenarios that we're going to present to you. We're going, if the committee wants to go with a different scenario, we're going to have updated ratios anyways. So we'll almost assuredly have subsequent drafts of this. Okay.
So one more, Chair Davis, if I could, before we
Yes.
jump over.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Dale. So when you said, are we not voting on this draft today? We're looking at different. Dale, help me understand here.
Chair, the intention, it's up to the committee what you wanted to do. We wanted, rather than not have a draft in backup, because we could have just presented our recommendations and then the following month come back with language. But one of the concerns about this entire process here is that right now, this entire process is in board rule, and the legislature, if the legislature wants, could simply pass in statute whatever they want. And the intention was to have something in writing that could be shared even in draft form to show that the board is working on a serious proposal forward. We wanted to have that done before the beginning of session. So it's up to the committee chair. If you want to pass a rule forward, you can simply amend this draft or with the 1.4%. And then if you want to keep with the scenario that's included here, you can move that forward, or we can come back with multiple drafts. I left it up to Ben. I asked him if we should have multiple drafts in backup so that you could simply pass one of them. He suggested that we have the one draft and then with the motion change these numbers if you wanted to go with a different scenario.
And if I can clarify this a little bit too, I think, Chair Hymas, if I can take a stab at it. We've had our finance team, and I've joined and it has had 2 meetings with our some charter school directors, stakeholders, so that we could look at different scenarios so we don't hit a fiscal cliff. There are pros and cons to a long rollout like this. The con being the legislature probably won't like it. The pro being it's very gentle for our LEAs and our charter schools. So we got to figure, the shorter you go, the more the legislature will like it. The longer we go, the more gentle of a adjustment period will be for our charter schools. And some may argue, well, it's considered sort of legally an overfunding, but at the same time, now we've got maintenance of effort issues to look at, and we've got employees that have been hired and whatnot. So we've been trying to take all of this into account and come up with a reasonable, what does it look like for a super quick rollout? What does it look like for a longer, more gentle fix or adjustment? And those are the scenarios Dale's going to share in his presentation coming up. And then we'll need to decide which of those we feel like is going to be the best moving forward.
Could I add one more thing in terms of the timing?
Yes, sir.
One other thought we had why we wanted to have a draft that could be moved forward if committee members wanted was because all of these changes here would apply starting, you can see, in fiscal 27. The idea being that the board notwithstood the main portions of this rule for 26 with the direction that you provided to us as staff to come back with recommendations on what to do with 27 and beyond. But it would be very helpful for Elevated Charter School to have this change in effect this year. And there's after it gets passed, then there's the 90-day waiting period. I believe it would still be effective next if it gets pushed back to passed by the board by March. I'd have to look back, but that was one of the other reasons why we thought it would be advantageous to bring this forward, because all the other changes are meant to really affect 27. This one is intended to fix 26, and it's really only elevated charter school for this year.
And personally, I'm not really comfortable not doing the other part as well, because the legislature needs to know that we see the issue and we're working on a correction to the problem.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted something in writing more than just a presentation, so that you could show not just the ideas, but something concrete in writing. This is what it looks like
Right.
in rule, and so
Which we can adjust
Correct.
depending if we go the shorter time frame or longer time frame. Matt, your hand is still up. Do you have another question?
I'm seeing these the multiplier they reduce. I'm seeing the needs of or the demands of special ed law, or things seem to tighten in responsibility, and resources there seems to be a greater need, but there's always a reduction. So it's probably just the time that we're in right now, that it's just concerning to see, the drop over time. But if it has to be done, I get that as well.
And the schools have been, no school is overfunded in education. Everybody's underfunded in education. The needs are greater than the funding. However, the way the funding parameters have been set up for us in our state, these schools have been overfunded for a long time. And so we have to fix that to be compliant within our own legalities, within our own legal constraints. So
Sure,
that's
could
what
I
we're trying
add
to
to that?
fix.
Could I
Yes.
answer that? So, legally, no school has been overfunded because nothing has violated rule or statute. It was the rule itself that didn't correct for this. But what it did do, and I showed this to you, is that it created, a subset of LEAs, of certain charters, the expanding charter schools, that were funded at a greater rate relative to other LEAs. And so that's what I would say, that were they overfunded relative to law? No. Were they overfunded relative to their peers? Yes. Or
Okay, so
like
I
LEA.
appreciate that. And let me clarify my language, and you tell me if this is an accurate statement. So legally, it's not a compliance issue, but they were funded for students that weren't there because there was no
Yes.
true up in the formula.
Yes, there was no true up, and that's the problem with the prior year plus growth, or the prior year
Right.
WPUs plus any growth there, that if the WPUs for whatever reason become inflated and there are not those students, the change in enrollments won't address that, which is the fundamental issue. Can I quickly go through this?
Yes.
And then we can talk more? Okay, thanks. I apologize. Just want to make sure that we
Yes, appreciate it.
moving on this. So
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, Kathy Olson's with us. Do you want to just have her introduce herself real quick and then segue into the presentation?
Yes, let's
Okay.
do that, and then we'll go into the presentation.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Kathy.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm sorry. I've had computer problems this morning, and I've been on with IT, and I was having problems trying to get into the meeting. My name is Kathy Olson. I work in financial ops under Deborah, and I've been with the agency going on 33 years now. So I've been there for a minute, been
Wow.
through several superintendents. What else can I tell you?
My goodness. Well, that's a pretty big thing. Thanks for all those years of service. Is there something interesting about you that you could tell us that we wouldn't know from interacting with you just day to day?
Gosh, I don't know. I spent 19 years working in CTE before I moved to internal accounting, which became financial ops. So I've kind of always worked in that stream. I do love my job. So I'm far old enough to retire, and I'm still sticking around. I'm not sure why. have to figure out what to do with myself when I don't work. I turned 70 this year, so.
Wow. Well, that's a life dedicated to the service of Utah children. Thanks for all that you do to help. We really appreciate it.
Had children in school, been through my grandchildren all being in school, and now we're starting off with, I have great grandkids who are now in elementary school. So,
oh my goodness. Well, thank you for your service, Kathy. We really appreciate your contributions, and thanks for joining our meeting today.
thank you.
Chair, I'll put my presentation back on if that
Great.
works for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hopefully I go to the correct screen this time. Let me know if you see the Redwood Forest again. All right.
You're perfect this time. Thanks.
Okay. So to just reorient everybody a little bit again at a very high level. So these are all of the basic school programs. These are the WPU based programs. And you can see down here on the bottom right hand side, we're talking about $4.2 billion. This is the largest line item in the entire state budget. Most of these WPUs are up here in the K-12 formula. When you hear the term WPU, most people are talking about these programs, but they're WPUs and a whole host of other programs. And the rest of the WPUs are essentially add-ons on top of that, whether it be NES or SPED or, you know, students at risk and so forth. The largest of the restricted basic school programs, sorry for sounding so duplicative there, is the SPED add-on formula, and it's almost $500 million. So that's what we're really focused on today. Okay. So to show you the issue again, and this was kind of going back to what is the problem that we're talking about. I wanted to compare two LEAs. So San Juan School District and the Ascent Academies of Utah have roughly the same number of special education students. And you'd expect their WPUs to be roughly similar. San Juan had 444 SPED students this October. I didn't update this to the December counts, but I imagine it's relatively similar. They have 465 WPUs at this program. So you'd expect that Ascent would be somewhere in that same ballpark, but even though they have fewer students, they have over 1,100 WPUs. And this is the issue that, you know, this 1133 is not violating statute or rule. It's actually because of rule that didn't true up to the number of students that got added upon over time, which is why Ascent is receiving so much more per student in WPUs. So, and you know, I showed you this graphic in November. Basically, if you look at the top left-hand corner, back in 2015, Ascent had 109 WPUs and 109 prior year ADM. So their ratio was 1 at that point. And then when they added a satellite campus, again, this is because of 479, we don't have all the data we need for that new satellite campus. They were projected to add 726 kids. There's the 10%, 72.6. That was added to their WPUs, and that gets rolled into the prior WPUs. And then the way the formula worked, it wasn't adjusting to not double count these students. It actually added 93 WPUs on top of that. And then the growth formula finally kicked in when you had the ADM for those 2 years. And that's why you have 229 WPUs there. So in this case here, that campus, essentially their SPED students got triple counted, and that never got trued up, which is how you can go from 109 to 518, and then with 2 other expansions all the way up to above 1,000, even though they have under 400 ADM. So that's in a nutshell the issue, that it wasn't until 24 when the rule first had a true up. That true up sort of didn't work. It was updated in 25. So 25 was the first year that we updated any new and expanding charter school budgets. This year, it was a lot larger of a group, and that's why we brought it to you in November. Okay, so we showed the ratios here. You can see that some of these ratios are well above 2, almost 3, when it should be somewhere between 1 and 1.3 usually. And you can see that districts, there's still variability, and that's because of the growth pieces of the formula. And these are just the top districts. There are others closer to 1, and I provided the backup all of the ratios for all LEAs. So, going back to the principles of a balanced funding formula, horizontal equity means that you treat students similarly that are in similar situations. Vertical equity is where you can treat differently situated students with different funding. I would argue that it was never the intention of either the legislature or the board to fund the charter schools at a different level for their special education students, and it's certainly not equitable on a horizontal basis. So if so that's the general issue. And when we met with charter folks, there was general agreement that this issue needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed in a way that allows LEAs time to adjust their programs and not immediately negatively impact students. So yeah, this was just to show you that in the case of SPED add-on funding for expanding charter schools, we're not meeting either of those, I would argue. So, this was the context in November, that because the rule requires USBE to true up now to the December 1 counts, essentially going close to that 1 number, that's where you had these significant cuts for certain charters. You might ask, why is Wallace-Stegner actually seeing an increase? They were one of the 2 charters that actually were decreased last year, so that their student increase this year is showing as an increase. And these were 2 other charters that merged with others, but are under the same definition as expanding. So we were looking at, at a minimum 11% cut for those who are going to see a cut, to, a 55% cut, and into the millions of dollars for American Preparatory Academy. This would have been very, very devastating for these programs, because half the year is already over, and that's why the board not withstood this with this motion. But then, again, as I had mentioned, the direction was to meet with stakeholders to come up with recommendations to 479 to address this issue long-term for all charters. Here are the folks that were part of our informal working group. We had BAs from APA, Gateway Prep, and Beehive. We had charter support services organizations, Academica West and Red Apple, and we had the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools present. And these folks were very helpful in providing feedback on the various different approaches that could be taken. So this table here shows you kind of the full spectrum of options that we were looking at. Originally, I didn't even bring up scenario A and B because those would actually negate the growth pieces of the special ed add-on formula. But it is, we wanted to include them here to show you kind of what the immediate implementation of 479 for everybody, not just expanding charter schools, would look like. And that would be close to scenario A. Not exactly, but close to scenario A. Scenario C is where we bring folks down to that 1.35. And that was, again, that rate for, I think, Wayne School District that was at the high end of the ratios for districts. And then from scenario C down to H, you're just lengthening out the phase down period. So scenario C would immediately reduce everyone to the 1.35. Scenario D would do that over 2 years, and then 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years. So you can see, why are we recommending 2 to 4 years? I'm going to go into that in the next couple slides. So this slide here shows some analysis to compare scenarios A through H. So A and B, again, would undermine the special ed add-on formula because it would essentially negate any kind of growth pieces of the formula. But it would provide $35 million of ongoing savings. It would impact next year 123 of the 155 LEAs, and the biggest cut would be 62.4% to any LEA. C is where we're getting into that subset of those charters that were on that first ratio graphic that I showed you, those kind of the top 30. And for them, it would be highly impactful. It wouldn't impact the other 125 LEAs, but it would be significant because you're fully implementing the reductions in 1 year, essentially. And then so this is showing the 27 changes because you're lengthening that out for D through H. It brings the savings down to 2,765,000 down to all the way to 35,000. And then I did want to show you, how many years under these different scenarios would LEAs have to plan for the reductions. The reason why A is -1 is you have to think about, when were LEAs planning for their special ed budgets for this year? It really was this time last year. And so if this was immediately implemented for this year, it's basically, you're on negative time. If it was implemented for next year, they would basically have no time because they would need to figure it out and implement it right away. And then this shows you, that it gives them a few years to plan for and address the reductions. So that's one reason we felt like that A and B are really shouldn't be included unless you want to fundamentally change the formula. C would be pretty challenging, very challenging for the affected LEAs, but G and H are very unlikely to be acceptable to the legislature. Kind of going back to what you were saying, Chair Davis, these are my assessments here on, what would likely be acceptable to the legislature. They would love to have $35 and $11 million, but at what cost and to whom? Probably they'd be accepting of $2 million, maybe the 765, 394, but that's where it gets where I couldn't tell you if I wouldn't be confident, but I would be highly confident that they would not be okay with a 6-year phase in, which is H, where the LEA that is most impacted only sees a 5% reduction. And we're talking about 35,000. Are we even addressing the issue at that point? I would argue no, not really. So that's some of the thought process here. And this was a challenging position to be in because we want to provide you information so you can make these policy decisions. These are challenging policy decisions on the effect to LEA side, but also the likelihood that the legislature would accept it side. So we kind of went through those, and then this is our synopsis of what the group provided us as the likely consequences of each of the scenarios. A and B would be widespread teacher layoffs. C would be pretty extensive teacher layoffs in 27 within those 30 LEAs. D would probably impact, would still cause some teacher layoff notices for 27, nothing for 26. And then, E and F, we would probably see more reductions to services, not as much to staff. And then G and H, you would see we would be surprised to see any reductions in staff and some moderate to minor reductions to to SPED services. I do want to be, I don't want to come across as callous though. All of these will be difficult for the most affected LEAs. Let me say that. So, you know, kind of what was the general assessment? D would be very difficult. E is pretty aggressive, but probably doable. F would be reasonable. G would be the preferred option, but probably not realistic. And H, what was used often was the term generous. And, you know, the fiscal climate, that's probably too much. Those were, you know, the reasons why we thought a 2 to 4 year phase in was reasonable, and why we're recommending that you consider those. But you can consider any of the different options, and we will move forward with what you want to do as policymakers. But that was just kind of the reasoning we had why we recommended these three. And so you can see scenario F, if you look back at the rule, these are the numbers that relate to that rule in that section 4. There's the 2.41 and the 2.06 and the 1.7. If you went with E, you would simply change it to the 2.3 and the 1.8. And then you would say, you know, from 29 and beyond, it's 1.35. And D would be 2.06 and 27. And then from 28 and beyond, it'd be 1.35. And then if you wanted to go outside of that, on either side of this, those would be the ratios there.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks for the presentation. That was great. So the language that's in the rule right now is scenario F. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So members, really what we need to do is decide. They just put scenario F in here to have some this is what the language would look like, but it doesn't need to be scenario F. It could be scenario A through H. Again, the shorter you go in the phase in time, the happier probably the legislature will be. The longer you go in the phase in time, the happier the LEAs will be. But I will say, I'm nervous to even, I don't see any hands, so I'm taking a liberty here, but I'm nervous to even go with F, because we know that we need to get to a point where we ask for an increase in the self-contained special ed weighting formulas. And we've been waiting to do that while we've been drawing down the carry forward balances from many of our LEAs. And now we're finally at a place where we can start looking at that. And now we've got to deal with this. So I'm like, and I'd be nervous to have that conversation with people this year until we kind of show we're really making an effort to fix this. So, my thought is even scenario F, I'd probably go with one of the others. I probably would not go with F, just knowing what we need to do with the legislature personally, and that, this is a true up, and we don't want to take so long to true up, but we also don't want to leave LEAs in problems with maintenance of effort or hitting fiscal cliffs and such. So we've tried to be really thoughtful in creating these, and the LEAs were great, and they said, we can make it work, but some would be better than others. Vice Chair Kelly.
I know that we're very aware that we're dealing with people's lives, their jobs, their careers. One of the things I've seen in education, I'd be curious to know, like, if we choose scenario F, when you reduce FTEs for a school, oftentimes what I've seen is they usually don't necessarily fire teachers, terminate teachers. Usually it's we don't replace this job that now just became open, and so I'm curious. I mean, it would be a school by school thing, but would we be terminating teachers, or would we be absorbing maybe some positions. And that may be just a hard question to answer because it would be a school by school situation. But they're hard decisions to make for sure.
I'll just say that based on the meetings that I attended, the largest LEAs were like, we don't have a problem with any of these, but we are aware of our small counterparts. Our smallest LEAs were like, yeah, it'd be kind of hard, pretty hard. So yeah, it is kind of there's the gamut
that's
there.
understandable. Yeah, when you're dealing with a staff of 40 versus a staff of 200, it's easier to absorb.
Right.
Staff of 200.
Yeah.
Chair,
Yeah.
can I
Point
just
well
quickly
taken,
go
though.
through the Beehive example? Because
Yes.
like
And
Vice
then we've
Chair,
got Randy Booth.
yeah,
We'll get
like
you
Vice
next.
Chair Kelly noted, it's going to be very individualized per LEA. So Beehive, if you looked at that list, was at the top of the list. They have a relatively small SPED population. They have 50 ADM. And these would be their impacts for next year with the different scenarios. So if you can imagine, if you lose 2 SPED FTE immediately for that are serving 50 ADM, that's going to be a huge impact. So D, they would likely lose one of their positions. Now, is that position filled or not? I don't know that answer for next year, but like D would still lose. The BA there said, yeah, if we lost 160,000 in our SPED budget year over year, we'd have to reduce one of our SPED FTE positions. E and F would be more on the administrative side, and certain SPED services would have to be streamlined, but they wouldn't have to actually reduce staff. Hopefully that gives you an idea of an example with one of the affected charter schools.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Was Beehive the most affected? I can't remember.
Yeah, they had the highest
I think
ratio.
they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even if you went with D, they would, I hate to say only be losing one because I know they need and want them all, but anyway.
So D would be a 23% year over year cut for them. To kind of give you an idea, that would be, they would be one of the most impacted LEAs. So the others would be less impacted in 27, where the impacts really occur are 28 for folks, but it does give that 1 year to plan and adjust.
Thank you, Member Booth.
So I'm just wondering how this really translates to student impact. So if we're losing one of our SPED staff members, how does that diminish the educational experience of the students that normally would have been handled and cared for by that staff member that we have to reduce? And I know that we've got to reduce, but it seems like there's a difference between students like these students who need certain things to be in place in order for them to have an education, whereas some of the additional programs that we have across the state just gives a more attractive option. I don't see these students and their needs as attractive or less attractive. It's just like, here's how we meet the basic needs of these students to provide them an education. And I'm just interested if there's any feedback on where would we be able to continue to provide for the students what they really need in order for the parents and for the staff members that are serving those students to be able to feel, okay, we're giving attention to these critical needs and we're not just treating this situation like any other situation across our broad range of students. Any thoughts from anyone?
I'll weigh in on that if you don't mind.
Vice Chair Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm going to echo what Chair Davis said earlier, and that is that most, if not every, school program is underfunded. And certainly these programs that we're talking about, I think what the effort is to do is to put them on par with all other LEAs in Utah. And so I don't know that we're necessarily cutting funding. I think we're just putting them on par with the rest of the state. And does that mean that they've been overfunded? Well, maybe not, but just making that attempt to put them on par with the rest of the state, I think, is what the effort is here.
And I should point out too that we have already, I mean, this could have been fixed immediately and had immediate, like, very, very, very difficult impacts. And we suggested, and then the whole board approved, kind of waiving this for this whole upcoming year. So we've already provided that cushion in, and now we're saying, do we need more cushion? And if so, how much? And how do we balance that with needing to get this true up fixed in the formula and needing to ask for other special ed needs for everyone across the board, including these schools, and getting to a place where we can do that. And also we're in a space where the legislature is saying, look, we're short on funds this year and every agency has to make cuts. And these are considered overages. And so how long do you allow an overage to go realistically?
When everything else is being cut. Yeah.
Right. It's a difficult space to be in.
Or,
and
I think
avoiding fiscal cliffs for our LEAs that are impacted here too. Sorry, Cole, go ahead.
No, you're right. I think what Dell has provided for us and the finance department is some ways to phase this so that it doesn't have an immediate just impact, but it trues them up over a period of time. So
can I provide just a little more context Committee Member Booth? I wish I had better answers. We certainly heard some of these things when we met with folks. Let me say that this was a bunch of finance people talking. I am not the education expert and I don't want to speak like that. So it's hard for me to know all the impacts. One point I wanted to make was that it's very, very it's going to be very varied. I guess I'm repeating myself, too many repeated words. Let me use just two examples here. So these were the projected cuts if 479 were implemented this year for Gateway Prep and Syracuse Arts. Both were expanding this year. So Gateway Prep, their budget was around the 150 WPUs for years. And this year in the legislative estimates, it went up to 255 because of the methodology that was used, the 10% times the projected enrollments. Their BA thought that was not realistic, and she actually set aside the funding worth of 100 WPUs because she thought the mid-year updates would reduce that. So they actually are not, this 42% cut would not have been super painful for them because they were already, they hadn't operated for years under the inflated WPU level. Syracuse Arts, on the other hand, they were at the inflated level for at least 8 or 9 years, maybe even longer, where that same 42% cut would be really, really challenging for them because that would mean an immediate layoff of staff. Maybe, you know, the analogy would be that, you know, if you had, so, you know, this might resonate with Vice Chair Kelly as the personal finance guru in the group. If you had somebody who was operating their personal budget, spending 60% of their income and saving 40%, if they, and let's say both, you know, it's a couple and one person loses their job, losing 50% of their income hurts, but it's not, you know, the end of the world because you're going from 60% down to 50%. If you were spending 100% of your income, then going from 100 to 50% is, you know, DEFCON 1. And so it's not that Gateway Prep was being more, in my analogy, it's one person being more fiscally prudent than the other couple. Gateway Prep is just how it worked out. Their expansion, that bump up happened this year. And so they never built that into their budget. But for Syracuse Arts, they did for years and years and years. And it happened for so long and so gradually that I don't blame them for not knowing that they were funded at an inflated level of WPUs. And so, you know, yes, there will be impacts. LEAs still have to meet the requirements of their IEPs. So I do think these impacts will not just be, you know, they might have to take general ed resources to supplement these changes too. I mean, certainly you know, if your IEP requires a Toyota Corolla and you're, you know, you're paying for, you know, a Tesla, that's, you can easily, well, not easily, but you can go down to the Toyota Corolla level. But if you're already paying just for the Toyota Corolla, then you might have to find money elsewhere to just pay that car payment. I don't know if any of that works. I know I mixed a lot of analogies, but
I like it, Dale.
yeah,
It works. Actually, the analogy works for a special ed consideration.
So is it
Because you have
best to
maintenance
split the
of effort.
difference?
They can't say we're not going to provide the services on the IEP because we're no longer getting extra funding. That's not legal. So they'll need to, you know, work on it over.
but Chair, it might be that, you know, rather than having a 1-to-1 aid or 1-to-2, it might be an aid with 5 students providing
Absolutely.
the same source.
And they'll
So
still have to meet the needs of the students. They'll just do it differently.
right. And so the burden will go up for these teachers and these affected LEAs, and it will impact students. It's just really hard to know, you know, every case.
Yeah, just like it does in all the other schools that aren't getting extra funding or an overage of funding. Yes, absolutely. Chair Hymas.
Yeah, thank you. Have you, Dale, have you spoken with the LFA on this? And any thoughts
Yes.
there?
So when I discovered this issue it was actually during session last year, I very briefly brought it up to Ben Leishman at LFA. He's the education finance manager. He said that we'll discuss it over the summer. That's when we looked much more closely at these ratios here. It was unclear whether PEA was going to move on this or not. They didn't immediately, and then the issue came up in terms of the new and expanding charter schools. We've been keeping them up to date on this. I've talked specifically about the Spectrum issue with them. Spectrum, you know, if they had to be cut down, we're not talking about 1 or 2 teachers. We're talking about, you know, in the hundreds of teachers, because they're so large and their special ed population is so large. That's maybe a discussion for another day. So we've talked about this phase down in general. Now, Ben Leishman can't talk for all of the LFA, let alone, you know, where legislators will be. But the general sense I got was that, yes, this needs to be phased down. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be done as quickly as is feasible for LEAs. But, you know, is that 2 years or is that 4? Not that level of guidance. Does that help, Chair?
That does help. Is the Chair Davis, if I could,
Please.
is scenario F then? I mean, I hate to see this at all, but I get it, right? I'm in that situation. Is scenario F, is that it says yes, but does that cause any issues with the legislators? We're trying to show legislators as well that we're responsible. Is F too much time? Is 4 years too much time, or is that it says yes, but is that really preferable?
Well, by yes, we mean that we as staff are proposing that you consider D through F. Yes doesn't mean that we think the legislature will for sure accept it. That's a really hard thing to know. I personally have my doubts about F, that they would find that acceptable. It's probably not strong enough. I would be surprised if they didn't, if they wanted to go faster than D, because I think legislators understand, you know, the same issues that we're grappling with here. I don't know, Chair. I mean, this is where it gets really challenging, and we haven't had those more in-depth conversations with legislators or LFA on these specifics.
Well, Chair Davis, one more comment. I understand that the legislature would probably prefer scenario A, but we've got to, such a hard cut, so drastic, so fast is going to be difficult.
Chair, can I, you know, like I said it quickly, I started with scenario C originally with the group. Scenarios A and B, I would hope that LFA, and I would think they would help legislators understand, yes, we'd love to save 35 million, but it comes at the expense of fundamentally undermining their own formula. So I doubt that they would even consider A and B. It's really C. The reason why is that you're essentially, you know, you have some fluctuation in that ratio as you add students or decrease students, you know, over time. It was that ratcheting up over time that caused this issue for charter schools. So yeah, we're showing you all of these because, you know, Chair Davis said she wanted to see all of the scenarios out there. You know, we could have gone longer than H, but that almost became silly. So for me, I think it's really between C and F. And I don't know. I mean, I would say I'd be surprised if the legislature generally pushed for C, because those 30 LEAs would be able to provide some very good reasons why, even though they have been, you know, overfunded compared to their peers, you know, that's been built into their budgets, and you can't change that without drastic impacts overnight. So,
I mean,
Thank you,
I'd be
Dale. Thank you, Chair
surprised
Davis.
if the legislature supported anything other than C or possibly D, personally. But you know, and maybe we go with D and just say, look, out of the ones that were recommended to us, we went with the most aggressive. But you know, there's a big difference between $11 million and $2 million, so they may pop up to C. I don't know. Member Booth.
If we're thinking that the 11 million is where the legislature might be inclined to focus their energy, then I would recommend that we consider going with E as our first choice. Kind of splits things down the middle in terms of equal pain for both sides. And then if we have to go with what the legislature requires or indicates is what we need to do, then we'd slip back to D as our.
Can I show you just some numbers very quickly so that you can put these in perspective here?
Yeah, but I'll just say it's hard to justify anything less than in the millions, though, to to the legislature. So I'm just really grappling with that also. But I hear what you're saying, Randy. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just there's a lot of pieces to it. Go ahead, Dale.
So what this is showing here, so these are the scenarios. Here's 26, and this is comparing to their 26 funding. So scenario B takes place in 27. You can see a lot of red here and a lot of major cuts. Here's did I skip? Oh goodness, where's scenario C? I wonder, A, B. So let's look at D, E, and F for example here. So next year, if we went with D, we're talking about $1 million cut year over year in the SPED budget for Ascent. 328 for Utah military, 600,000 for American Prep. And then, like I was saying, the big cuts come the next year. There's 2.4 billion, 2.2 billion for APA and Ascent and Beehive.
Million, not billion.
Excuse me, million. So you can see that it's, if you go to 3 years and 4 years and 5 years, then it pushes that out. But it is the question that you're trying to grapple with is how smooth of a ramp can you create while still showing the legislature that we're serious about solving the problem? I don't know if that's helpful, but I just wanted you to see kind of visually what it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh. So that's the question for the committee. If you want to move forward today on a rule, then I'd recommend that you pick whichever scenario you want and then make these ratios what that scenario is. And then we can come back with the draft that fixes this issue for the extended school year on 109.
I'm looking for a motion. Chair Hymas?
Yeah, I'd love to move that we adopt option E, as in echo.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor that that we adopt option E. Any discussion to the motion?
Let me just, if I could, Chair, because I know that there's some concern. I know that there's concern here. I know that there's concern with all of these. I do believe that the smoother rollout would be more helpful for our LEA leaders. I don't think that any of them are going to argue like the fairness of it, but drastic cuts are difficult. It's difficult on resources, it's difficult on families, and it's difficult on students. And so if we can take a few years to get this where it needs to be, I think that would be best for our LEAs. And then we also have the concern of the legislatures on our other side. And if they do come back and say, no, you've got to choose something else, this at least gives us some flexibility to be a little softer still, and at least have that conversation. We're in a difficult spot no matter what. And so I'm just trying to find the best way. My original option was F, of course, right? Or no change, right? Let's keep it how it is. But those aren't options. And so I'm just trying to find a good balance that will frustrate the least amount of people for the least amount of time. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kelly?
Chair Hymas, I'm curious to know why E, not D. You know, I did hear your explanation just now, but I think I would lean more towards D because I think it's a little more aggressive. I think it sends the right message. When Dale gave us the scenario of Beehive, D eliminated 1 FTE. If that's incorrect, Dale, then correct me. But
That's correct, Chair.
okay,
Vice Chair.
yeah, and so you know, if that's the school that will have likely the biggest impact, and choosing D eliminates 1 FTE. While I'm very cognizant of that 1 FTE, I don't see that as being overly aggressive. And so, you know, I'm leaning more towards D than E. So yeah.
And seeing no hands, I'll say that I am also, because I fear that anything under the millions in the savings is going to be seen as almost doing nothing. That's my worry. But
Chair, could we pull that graph back up where you did the different scenarios for the different schools, Dale?
Sure, happy to do that.
There you go. Will you put on D compared
I'm gonna show the actual spreadsheet if that's okay, Chair.
sure.
Okay. I'm here, so this is D right here.
It's D. Okay.
So when I showed you the $2.1 million, that's the reductions to these 6 LEAs. So Success Academy is really, you know, essentially year over year the same, but you know, it's $1 million for Ascent, 600,000 for American Preparatory Academy. And you can see the percentages of their sped budget, you know, 23% and then 19. But then those cuts double in 28, where if you look at E here, so just comparing kind of year over year here. So let's just take Ascent, right? It's a 9% reduction year over year to a 25% reduction. This is comparing 28 to 26. And then a 42% reduction. So you get to essentially the same place. The reason why, you know, the WPU value going up helps to smooth things a little bit. Hopefully that helps. Happy to answer any specifics that you have, specific questions.
That helps me, Chair Davis, if I could, and this is my point here. I lost at my school. I lost about 400,000. That's not great. That's about 3 or 4 FTEs, or 5 if I'm lucky, right? But the kids aren't going anywhere, right? And so I need to have time to plan. I need to have time to say, okay, how are we going to readjust? Now, if we go with D, we're looking at, again, for Ascent, $1 million 1 year and then $2 million the next year. It's going to happen, but how quickly is where we get to say. So that's why to answer Vice Chair Kelly's question. That's why I'm saying that's why I'm asking for E. And I get that the LFA or legislatures they have their concerns. I'm hoping we can talk to them, but we're making efforts here. We're doing the work, but we're trying to also help children and LEAs at the same time.
And personally, I'm open to all of these perspectives, and I tried hard to listen to them too when we were having our meetings with stakeholders. And maybe I have PTSD from USDB, quite honestly. So I'm like, where do we need to go here? But honestly, Dale, can you explain something that you just said? Because maybe I missed that earlier in our meetings, but you said in the end, it's going to be the same place. But I see a difference between a 2 million plus savings and a, $700,000 savings. But you're saying in the end, it's all going to end up similarly? What do you mean by that quote?
Yeah, so good question, Chair. So by that I mean you're getting down to the 1.35. So you can see here, let me just use the example of Beehive. Okay. Under D, they get to the 1.35. So it goes under D, it's 23% cut, then it's the 47% cut. 47.
They get there in 2028.
In 2028. Under E, they get there in 2029, but then the WPU value is 45% cut but it's still the 1.35. So my point is you're getting to the same place, but just having more time. You can see that under F, it's 43% cut in 30. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, they're getting to the same place. It's just the savings to the state comes more slowly.
Correct.
Yeah. We have Chris Helvey hand up.
Yes. Hey, Chair Davis. This is Chris Helvey, Freedom Preparatory Academy.
Hi, Chris.
I remember you talked about MOE, but I'm looking at some of these numbers, and is there going to be a chance, Dale, that this is going to hurt these charter schools to miss MOE 1 year, and then the next year with the greater cut to have 2 years in a row of MOE misses, which can trigger some not happy things with MOE folks?
So, Chair, can I answer that question? We specifically brought in Cole Shakespeare, who runs our fiscal monitoring team, and he's been a special education fiscal monitor for years, specifically on this question.
Can you remind me what MOE?
So yeah, MOE means maintenance of effort, and generally it's a federal requirement that you spend. So the general idea is you spend the same amount this year as you did last year from the same funding source. So I'm not an expert here
for special education.
For special education, yes, not everything else. So if you're seeing these large reductions, there is a good chance that LEAs will not meet on the state financial side MOE. You can meet MOE though with different approaches. One is your local funding side, but then there's a chance will the U.S. Department of Ed change their rules on this? Right now, that doesn't seem likely, but to make that more restrictive on MOE. And then Cole did say that if you do see a reduction in force, there is a way to account for that in MOE. So I know it's not the most comforting answer so the answer is yes, there will be impacts on MOE. Will they immediately be, there will likely be other ways to meet MOE. Will that always be the case? I can't guarantee that.
And it's state, not federal.
Yes, this is it's a federal requirement, but it's looking at state special education dollars.
Is there a way to put some kind of...
it would be okay. Sorry, I'm not sure who was speaking right there, but Member Booth, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
So I certainly resonate with what Member Hymas is saying regarding his reasons for zeroing in on E rather than D. However, having had that conversation yesterday with Representative McPherson, where he was very open and direct that our fiscal recommendations were not helpful, because we continue to want what students really need rather than what a group of well-meaning leaders think they should need. And we happen to be placed in this position because we have some experience in the educational field where the rubber meets the road. And so if we were to go with E, we may have a number of legislators who would push it the other direction and say it's got to be D or C. But at least we have stood up for the role that we are supposed to be playing as the people on the bus who've had significant experience and are still experiencing day to day what is needed to provide for our students the education that we have been charged to provide. I think we can try to read what they're going to want us to do and what they do, but they have the freedom to do a lot of things that we don't want them to do, and that is not helpful to education, and they're going to do that anyway. I'm being pretty honest here. I'd be happy to have the same conversation with any of the legislators that would have concern with what I'm saying, but I think we need to still stand up for what should be happening in education, and we recognize we've got to bring this into compliance and we've got to make the reductions, but we also have to continue to figure out how to make those limited resources that we have do what they must do for every student that we have responsibility for. So I'm still leaning more towards E, even though I recognize that we may very well end up with D or C once it all comes out in the wash.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Kelly.
I appreciate Member Booth. Looking out for the students, I think, is important for all of us. But I think it's important to remember too that we have to look out for the taxpayer, and we need to recognize that they want us to be fiscally responsible with their tax dollars. And I'm gonna turn back to Dale Frost, his analogy of the Tesla versus the Corolla. And I live in Vineyard, which is kind of turning into a college town here. And I've teased that there's this the personal financing. There's a lot of people saying, oh, these young kids are not going to be able to buy a home. They're not going to be able to buy a home. But yet they're driving around in vehicles that have $600 a month payments, and it's like I drive around in a Toyota Camry that has 290,000 miles on it and the check engine light's on, and it keeps going, and as long as it keeps going, I'm going to keep driving it, and my car payment on it is zero. And so I think it's important for us to recognize, look, we've got to be responsible. We're just asking these schools to drive the Toyota Corolla and not the Tesla, where all other schools in the state have been driving a Toyota Corolla. And so, I do think that we need to be fiscally responsible, and I still think that scenario D is the better option for us, because I think it sends the right message to our constituents, taxpayers, but I think it also, it puts these schools on a level playing field with the rest of the state, and they're going to be driving the Corolla and not the Tesla. So.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands here. So we have a motion on the floor made by Chair Hymas that the committee adopt option E to move forward to the board and or scenario E, I should say. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Christina, are you still here or are you still in and standards and assessment? I see Christina's screen on, but I think she might be in standards and assessment. See, I was taking that vote hoping that she would be a tiebreaker so we could move this forward to the board.
Can we just count Cole's aye on the no vote as an aye for yes? We just count that.
Is that supposed to, I didn't know whether I was supposed to do an aye or a nay. Yeah, that's, I mean, technical. Another mistake.
No, we're counting it.
Made.
and look, I'll be honest, like I see the arguments for E, and I'd like to go headlong into E. I also just have some of our past experiences and understandings that we need to be really responsible with the dollars. So I'm struggling. Would you feel comfortable if we, you know what, I'll go ahead and vote for E at this point, and then just express my thoughts again at the general board meeting about the pros and the cons of D and E, so that we can get this moved forward for discussion with the board. But I do have still, real concerns with it. So let's go ahead and move on to our next agenda item.
Chair.
Yeah, do I need to restate it? Restate that?
We need to pass the actual rule now. So we
okay.
Did the amendment.
Yes. There's a motion on the floor that the committee approves R277-479 funding for charter school students with disabilities on an IEP draft 1 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Those in favor say aye.
That would actually need to be the motion. No one has placed that motion yet.
I will move that motion as read. So there is a motion on the floor that the committee approves R277-479 funding for charter school students with disabilities on an IEP draft 1 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? That passes unanimously with Member Bogus being absent. I'm just going to throw this out there that I think that I was right when we were starting Dale's presentation today, I was thinking for our lunch and learn meeting for February, I think we just throw our whole time into this, honestly, because it's a lot. And the members that come can kind of really try to think through, look at the scenarios and try to think through the issues there. Thanks everyone for your input. I really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and move on to item 2.3, review of internal policies and potential action for grant of any type, application and acceptance by the Utah State Board of Education. We have Deputy Superintendent Jones and Compliance Officer Sarah Harward here with us.
No, thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, last time, I'm going to remind the committee that we had a recommended action that the committee recommends that the board support the process that allows for application for grants of any type without board approval, but that the board approve the acceptance of any grant that is not already established in legislative appropriations and or by previous board approval. Okay, go ahead, Deputy Jones.
Yeah, so I was going to emphasize that as well. I mean, the purpose of this is to ensure that you as finance committee members and then subsequently other board members that are not on the finance committee but had concerns or have concerns about the process of application approval, so that, and that we're demonstrating that we have internal controls in place or policies. And the best one to do that, of course, is Sarah, who is our grants compliance officer. So without further delay, if you can allow Sarah to take over and demonstrate the processes that we have in place and the policies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Sarah Harward. I'm your grants compliance officer. You can see my presentation, correct? Okay,
yes.
Great. Okay, so after listening to your committee meeting last month, I hope I've gathered what you wanted me to go over. So please let me know if you have any questions. But what I'm going to go over today is 3 policies that we have regarding our grants and acceptance from the board and our different processes. So first is 0108, which is our grant management policy. Then I'll go over 0301. This is going to be the main one that we're going to talk about because it goes over most in depth about the pre-award process. And then internal policy 0606. So 0108 is our grant management policy. It goes over our pre-award activities with how we seek new funding, apply for it, we submit those proposals, and then accepting grant awards. And then it does reference in that section to also review internal policy 0301. So that's going to be the policy that we're really going to focus on when it comes to this pre-award processes. But 0108 also goes over our oversight and how we manage our grant programs, our system controls, and then which individuals are responsible for managing grants and our compliance with those different requirements. It also reviews our responsibilities for our financial operations staff and our grant managers and outlines our reimbursement procedures and closeouts, basically covering all those steps that we as an agency take after a grant. So because of that, I'm not going to focus too much on this policy because it's really the post-award, and I felt like what you really wanted to see was the pre-award, which really is covered in 0301. So this policy outlines how we report our federal grants to you as the board in our what we call our primary approval process, which is the federal funds request summary, otherwise known as the FFRS. And I'll talk about that document a little bit more in just a second. Then it outlines the federal grants that we receive outside of that timeline, also known as our secondary approval process. It also describes our impact categories for our federal grants, and I'll review that more in just a second. And then that grant application process and how it is to be presented to you as the board. And then it also outlines our compliance monitoring measures. But the federal funds request summary. So this is a document I put together each year. It's due to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget in October. And so it outlines all of the federal funds that we are to receive for the next year. This covers our title funding, adult education, CTE, things like that we get annually. So the policy states that in May, me as the grants compliance officer, I get that preliminary data from our staff. And then in October, I submit it to the governor's office. Sometime between May and October, that document should be on your board consent calendar for you to review. Once I submit it to, we have a grants.utah.gov system that I submit the document to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. It is also reviewed by Deborah Jacobson, and she's the final person to hit submit on that. GOPB then takes it to LFA. LFA may include it then on the base budget bill as directed by the Executive Appropriations Committee. And then the legislature passes our Appropriations Act with our federal funds and all that. So that's where the majority of our federal funds that you see. If we want to apply for a grant and we don't get it on that document, we are awarded it and submit it to you through that. Then we have the secondary approval process, which you're familiar with, is when we bring a grant application to you. So staff should notify me of any new or renewal federal grants, and then I help them get it on your consent calendar. So it should go to you before they apply. Now, there have been scenarios in the past where the timeline of having to apply is faster than we can get it to you. And in those scenarios, they have brought it to you where they've applied but not accepted the award yet. So we have seen that in the past. Sorry, Deputy Jones.
So, Madam Chair, I think this is where we need to pause, because I think this is some of the concern of board members, both either within Finance Committee or outside of Finance Committee, is, I mean, we feel strongly that we built internal controls in place that, so say the board meets in June, but they don't meet in July. And then we're notified of let's say Superintendent Hart is notified of an opportunity for a federal grant, but the application closes on July 15th or thing. So I think the question is can we, under our internal controls and policies, we being staff, apply for that grant? And in the past, we've been able to apply for the grant. However, before accepting the grant, that has to go in front of the board. But if we're in a space where board members are concerned that we shouldn't even have the opportunity to apply for a grant before the board approves us to apply for a grant, then we would need to change the wording of the policy, right? So if that's, I think, as we proceed, as Sarah proceeds, is what I was understanding of the concern or the question of others is, well, and I understand the example was a private grant, so we'll get into that as well, because the Utah code is pretty moot on private grants. So Sarah's starting out with federal grant processes, but it was the IHC private grant that spurred this question, and rightfully so, that's fine, about, well, can staff go out and apply for, in a similar scenario as I described with the federal grant, if a private grant is offered and the superintendent says, yeah, I think that's something that we might want to take advantage of, then, the policies were put into place to facilitate or allow for application in between board meetings or, times to do that. But I think if the core question is, do we need to, is it the desire of the board or majority of the board members that even before applying for any new opportunity grant or anything, that has to come before the board? That would definitely, as Sarah explained, have some second and third level effects of timing. So thanks, Sarah. So
might I ask a quick question? When we apply for a grant, if there's time to get it on a board meeting, is it put in the consent calendar that we're going to apply for the grant, or is it only, so there's historically always been notice of application to apply for federal grants. If there's enough time, has there always been notice for intention to apply for private grants? Or have those never been noticed to the board before the applications have been made?
According to our policy, they need to be noticed, even our private grants. So
Okay.
they should be going to you prior to accepting awards.
Okay. And so is there some language in there that says, because I would like us, if we find of a grant and there's a 2-week notice and it's not a laborious grant, I would like us to have the option to apply, but then the board to have the option to accept or not accept. And this is going to be a rare occurrence, kind of like the IHC thing, but I'd like there to be some language in our policy specific to that, so there's an understanding of process, that we all have.
yeah, so Madam Chair, so Sarah, go ahead and go back to, let's get through the federal. Sorry, this is Scott, because they think, but that's as we progress together through this presentation, and so now we know Board Member Davis's or Chair Davis's points here. When you get to that, that policy where it details the private grant part of it, and that too. So, okay. Yeah, she's going to do that, ma'am. So,
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. So just jumping back, to our secondary approval process. So one of the things that we have to outline and give you information on is the impact category of the grant. And so the policy outlines these categories, and it's based on the annual dollar amount threshold if a new additional FTE are needed and any new dollars or state match. So if a grant is considered low impact, it's less than $1 million annually. And I say annually, if the total award is $3 million over 3 years, it would still be considered low impact because it's $1 million per year. A medium impact grant is anything between $1 and $10 million, asks for more between 1 and 11 FTE, and has between $1 and $1 million in new money or state match. The high impact grants are going to be those that are $10 million or more annually, more than 11 new FTE, and then more than $1 million for state match. So what these categories, go ahead.
Are we using these also for private grants?
Yes.
In addition to federal? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. So these categories apply to any federal and private. What these categories then determine is our action steps. So if we have a low impact grant, we have to submit the terms and conditions to the Attorney General for review, provide notice to the board of the application, or if it's a reauthorization of a grant that we've received in the past. So that grant application should be placed on the board's consent calendar for you to approve for us to move forward in that process. And then if we are, you vote on it, and then if we get the grant, if we are awarded it, you should also be notified on your next monthly meeting. Then what I have to do is then report it to the Executive Appropriations Committee, and I do so through that grants.utah.gov portal, where I send it to the governor's office of planning and budget, then goes to LFA and that whole process. And then I also work with our Utah grants team to get it in the Utah grant system if it needs to be there, and that kind of thing. And then also with our accounting and any audit staff that are necessary. If it's a medium impact grant, we have to follow that same process that we just outlined for the low impact grants, but there are some additional steps. It also needs to go to the Employee Action Committee if you approve it, and Executive Appropriations Committee. Too many acronyms. The Executive Appropriations Committee then gets to recommend if we accept the new funding, we don't accept the new funding, or if they feel like we should call a special session, legislative session, to review and approve or reject the new funding. So they have that authority with medium impact funding as well. If it is not considered approved until it is ratified by the Executive Appropriations Committee or the governor's office, and then we should report their decision back to you. If we have a high impact grant, we follow the same process for the low impact, but this requires that the full legislature must approve the grant in a legislative session. Good example of this was our COVID funding. We had to get approval from the legislature in session before we could move forward with the funding. And then again, report back to you with the decision. So with private grants, so with federal grants, this policy states that it is really before applying. With private grants, it says we should bring it to you prior to applying or accepting an award. Again, notifying me about the proposal, the application, or the renewal, or the interagency agreement. And again, I have to take it to you, report to the board of any new applications with that impact category, and then we follow those steps according to that impact category. So there's more
flexibility. Sorry, I just want to try to wrap my head around this. So there's more flexibility in our policy for a private grant than a federal grant, because you can either get the approval on the application end prior to that, or you can get the approval on the acceptance end prior to that.
Yeah, but regardless of either one, before we accept the award, it should come to you for.
And in practice, we've been following the federal practice of putting even just the notice prior to application on the consent agenda, unless there's an anomaly like the IHC thing where it was a window of time that was quick and we didn't have time to get it on.
Right.
Okay. I'm just trying to wrap my head around standard practice for these. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I did give training to our staff on this back in November. So they've had a refresher on this. I've had a refresher on this. So hopefully, our staff are aware of this policy now, or, reminded of this policy. So hopefully everything should be followed in practice. That is our goal. Okay, so that's the major policy. And then we have one more policy, which is really on procurements. So this 0606 outlines the procedure for obtaining board consent to finalize procurement agreements, including contracts, interagency agreements, memoranda of understanding, as described in this policy. So this is where we get that $100,000 threshold, where any agreement that exceeds $100,000 should not be executed by staff until the board has formally approved that agreement. So this is when the purchasing director, he submits a list of all those agreements for your review. He has to do an electronic copy of all those agreements to your board meeting on your consent calendar. And then the policy does state that our purchasing director or somebody from purchasing and then the staff member applicable to that agreement should be at your board meeting to answer any of your questions. So that's that. Okay, so that's all three of those policies, a little bit different for each, but any other questions?
It doesn't sound to me like we necessarily need a change in policy if the standard practice is to notify the board prior to the application, but in the rare instance that we have a tiny turnaround window, and even in that case, it will come to the board prior to approval. But I'm not seeing any board members' hands, but maybe others have questions or a different understanding.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Whoever's driving, could you go to the board policies portion of the website just so we can orient everyone to? Well, actually, go to the board policies website first.
Oh,
or
sorry.
No, you're fine. That's fine. No, that's fine. Where the board policy establishes that staff, the superintendent and staff and sections of the board can write internal control policies, right? Or internal policies. So here you have, these are what Sarah was referencing. So if you go down to the private language, where is it? Yeah, right there. Yeah. Paragraph 4. So see, to me, because, I was much the architect of this. I mean, we brought in a firm to help us, but so I've been here for 10 years. We had to put internal controls in place. But because the code is moot on private grants for agencies, we took it upon ourselves because the board in your policy says we may write internal policies and things that, and I'm not saying it's to avoid having to create rules to administer or govern us as your staff, right? But I really think that's a lot to have to do with it, right? Is why, we just don't want to be writing rule after rule after rule when we can just, control our processes and our procedures by way of internal policies that affect the staff, and then we can test those controls, et cetera, et cetera. So Sarah did a great job of describing to you at a higher level what we've had established for years, right? With it. So if there's some kind of a wording issue in here or the process of it too, but I sense that some board members really would like us, the staff, to be, to adhere to board rules or that the board sets the policies, that internal policies are not set by the staff, right? Which you do allow for in your current board policy. And I just want to make sure everybody's clear on how this came to be, right?
Yeah.
And then I would also like to add that since we put these controls in place, we have had very good audit findings on our single audits about how we control and manage federal funds. We've had little to no, we do have minor situations where, $1,000 here or $6,000 here, federal money was used unallowably, but nothing on the scale of what we were experiencing before we put these kinds of policies into place, and the systems as well.
We've had no substantial findings for
years, which
has been amazing. But I do think some wording change could be made up there in the top, because it's saying prior to submitting an application or accepting an award, the employee shall notify the grants compliance officer But what it could also add is, and be added to consent calendar for the board, even though we've been doing that in practice, it could be added there in black and white. Vice Chair Kelly has something, and I'm not making a motion. The committee can decide what it wants to do, but I'm just pointing out a possible. Oh, actually, that's in number 2. Maybe
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
covered there.
Right.
Cole, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate. I know that my stance on federal funds coming to the state has been widely recognized by our board, and but I also want to state that I don't. I think one of the biggest things that concerns me is the strings attached part of it, right? And if money's coming in from the federal government, does it then force our hand in certain ways and in certain things? But I do like the idea of allowing staff to apply for grants that may be available, and then whether we accept, if that grant is granted, then the board has the authority then to say, this is a grant that we approve, that we like, that we think is good for our state and good for our kids, or this grant has strings attached that we're not willing to comply with, and so we're going to reject this offer and reject this. So the idea of allowing staff the opportunity to see opportunities to apply for grants, I don't think is something that I would support. So,
and if I may, Madam Chair, so what Board Member Kelly has pointed out is what the board, the process that we went through with the CMP or the department, that was also part of that same consent calendar where you had the private grant with IHC, and then you had the grant opportunity for the farm. See, what I'm trying to overly emphasize here is that there's no circumventing of the board going on, right? Where we're going out and accepting money without your knowledge or without your say in whether to accept the grant. It's just that application piece and the timing of it, that if the superintendent sees a potential, she gets notified from, well, pretty soon it won't be Department of Ed, but where she gets notified from, hey, state chief officers, there's this federal grant that's available for moving rocks from point A to point B. And she's like, oh, I want to see that, but we can't get, we have to apply within 30 days and you're not meeting, within 30 days. That it gave us the flexibility to apply, but never ever accept a grant without first informing the board that we did apply, and that, here are to openly in the consent calendar say, well, here's what this means. Here's what the grant's for, which I think you experienced pretty well from Kim Loveland. I thought she did a good job of explaining to you all what that farm grant was for, and and it gave the board members opportunity to say, well, are there strings attached? What does this mean? How much money actually ends up going to the farmers? Those types of things. That's what we put these things in here, was to facilitate that process, and it seems to have worked pretty well for years, right? But if there's concern from board members, or individuals in the public that, we're just out there, going and finding grants and you don't know about it, that is not true. There's no undermining or going on. We are following procedures and policies that have been in place for years now. So thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate, Vice Chair Kelly, what you said. I mean, we may need to clarify our overall board position, because 100% of what you just said, I agree with, especially with the caveat of the strings, but not throwing away opportunities that we could have to get funding back. And in fact, if our letter that created a position would have said exactly how you just said that, I would have voted for that. Member Booth.
I just have a motion if you're ready.
I'm ready.
I move that the committee recommend that the board support the process that allows for application for grants of any type without board approval, but that the board approve the acceptance of any grant that is not already established in legislative appropriations and or by previous board approval.
Thank you, Member Booth. Is that written down somewhere? Do you have language?
That
Or
is,
that the language that we had last time?
that's just in the agenda for today.
Yeah, it's right there. He pretty much put it.
I may add an amendment to that, but there's a motion on the board that the committee recommends that the board support the process that allows for application grants of any type without board approval, but that the board approve the acceptance of any grant that is not already established in legislative appropriations and or by previous board approval. Discussion to that, and again, I think I have an amendment, but members, do you have discussion to this?
Excuse me, Chair Davis.
Yes.
Yeah, this is an interesting motion here. I do support this, and I will vote for this. It's just interesting that we're voting. It's not typical that we vote to support something that's been ongoing. And
right.
I wondered, and this is on me 100% as somebody who has had eyes on this agenda for a while, is I'm not sure how this became an action item, a discussion item for sure, 100%, because there was some confusion. But now that the knowledge is out there, I don't see any movement for change. So I don't know if that would be or any appetite for change of the policy. So I don't know if it would be best to just have no motion and this just be a discussion or information item. But I see Scott's hand up. That could offer clarity. It's just a different something I haven't experienced yet.
I hear what you're saying, and actually my amendment would have been that language we found that's already in number 2 of the policy. So I don't even know what I would amend now at this point. Deputy Jones?
So I went back and I listened to the dialogue of the consent calendar where the IHC grant and the farm grant was on there. And I could be misinterpreting this, and I'm not critical of anything or anyone, but it did seem to me that the question has become, well, should we continue with this or put, into rule what has to happen with grants, right? Coming to the board, or so what we're trying to do here is see if the finance committee will recommend to the board that we continue with the processes and policies and procedures that were designed based on prior board implementations and policies. Does that make sense? Because if we do this as a discussion item, it still doesn't, I don't know, if it's not an action item, then you don't discuss it in front of the board. Information items and discussion items don't get put in front of the full board. And it seems that there's other board members outside of finance committee that are concerned with the process, the policies, the procedures, so how, other than an action item, would you be able to get that in front of them to make sure that they know that, we're following our own internal policies and internal controls and they're working? Does that make sense what I'm asking or trying to clarify?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you want to keep it as an action item in case that board member or someone else wants to change this from a policy to a board rule or something of that nature.
Right.
If we leave this motion like this and we just offer a show of support for the current process, I think that the language of the motion is a tad misleading because it takes out the provision of number 2, which requires that this is the application of grants of any type without putting it on consent calendar prior to the application is only when you have a short window of time and the board can't. This makes it sound like we can apply for any grant, federal or otherwise, whenever we want, but then have to get approval from the board instead of that those need to be put on the consent for the board prior to the application when there's time to do that. Does that make sense? The language of this particular motion.
Right, yeah, so if I may, Madam Chair, I know Chair Hymas has his hand raised.
Yeah.
Sarah articulated that, though, that all efforts are made to ensure that if the timing is suitable, that we do put, hey, here's a grant opportunity, you know.
I agree. I just want it
But I
put
see,
into
no,
there.
I'm just saying I see
So
your
that when the
point.
public sees
Right.
it,
Yes.
they know
Okay. Okay.
we have that provision in place.
Right.
Chair Hymas.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, thank you. When I reflect back on the whole debate during board meeting, it was complex. And, Scott knows this. Scott has information that we didn't have, and he shared it here. And it's clear to all who are watching this now, and hopefully all who are watching this later, it's clear that this is complex and there's a lot to it. It's not as simple as this motion makes it seem. And so I agree with you, Chair, that this motion almost seems misleading, or that it changes what's happening here. So I'd hate to take all the work that has gone into it and try to narrow it down into one motion and then move on that. That's part of my concern there. But I do want to say, if I could, I do want to say to Scott and his team, thank you. This is incredible. This is information that we didn't have. And I get that every 2 years you don't want to, sit down with each individual board member and say, hey, here's what this looks like. But this is great for this committee, and it's great for our board.
And I had no idea we had these internal controls built in addition to we need approvals from the legislature for a variety of things that we're applying for. Those are great internal controls as well. Well, a little more external, I guess. I don't mind making a motion, but I think it needs to be, we have this motion on the floor, Member Booth, if you want to keep it, but I would almost just simplify that to the committee recommends that the board, study and support the current process for grant applications, period. Chair Hymas, what do you think about that?
I think that better reflects what we've learned here today. I hate to put something in a motion that is a little bit misleading, especially for all the work that's been done. I don't want to throw that away. I don't want to debate it and say, no, they have to do this, this, and this, because what they're doing is what we want.
Right. And that's not on Member Booth. That was all 5 of us when we had a very simplified understanding of what was happening earlier on. We just wanted a provision for that small window in the rare anomaly time when they couldn't get it to us soon enough. Member Booth,
I'm perfectly happy I was just trying to facilitate reading what was given to us on the agenda, so I'm happy to have it rewritten. It's great.
Then if you're comfortable with that, Member Booth, and since we don't need seconds in committee, we'll have you go ahead and make the motion as we've kind of talked through it and looked at this new motion. Are you comfortable with that?
That's fine. Yeah.
So do we need to put the word current? The committee recommends that the board study and support the current grant application process. Do we want to say including internal controls for acceptance and approval?
If I could, Chair, I don't know. I mean, you can add whatever you want, but the more you add, the more, we're essentially, from what I'm understanding, I think so, because we're saying, look, it's in backup.
Okay.
There it is.
Okay. I'm fine with that. And let me take a quick sweep for hands really quick here and make sure we're good. All right. Member Booth, go ahead.
I move that the committee recommend that the board study and support the current grant application process.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the committee recommends that the board study and support the current grant application process. Those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? That passes unanimously with Member Bogus absent. Last one, we have USBE Annual Research Agenda Submission to the Utah Data Research Center. Just for time's sake, a quick reminder that anything we suggest, any research project we suggest here, it has to cross more than just our agency for this state research resource to be used. So I know there's a recommendation here. I had thought about making another one, and then I saw this one. I think this one's good too. So let's go ahead and I'm probably everybody read through that preparing for this meeting, but let's go ahead and have Director Bruff just quickly summarize this for us.
Thank you. Aaron Bruff, Director of Data and Statistics. Again, and just let me just clarify super fast too. The reason why it has to be multiple agencies is if it's just internal, we can do it internally. If it's just the K-12 system, we can do the research here ourselves if we have the capacity to do it. The reason why we say if it's got to be cross-agency, because that's when we pass it off to them. With that said, we put together a proposal saying we really want to look at how well has integrated math model impacted students' readiness in basically a post-secondary and workforce. And so that would be the structure. Say we would look at adoption of the integrated math model. We would also do a literacy review around the country to see what else is out there, what are other places finding out about the different impacts of these models. And again, the idea is come back to the board saying, this is what we know, this is what we found out, here's the empirical information, and obviously then make whatever recommendations or adjustments based upon the empirical findings that we have through the research. So that's the proposal again, and it's that time of year we're open for other research that the board is interested in doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bruff. Seeing no hands, I'm seeking a motion.
Can I ask a question, Chair Data? Sorry, I had to process for a second. Would this research into the integrated math, what does that do to the current standards that are being considered right now? I guess I'm asking about timing here. I'm not swaying to either side. I'm just wondering about timing.
So timing wise, I mean, obviously, well, when I say obviously, sorry, that's the wrong word. A research done by the UDRC, so the Utah Data Research Center, usually takes about 8 months to complete. So when you're saying timing, let me ask you.
Yeah, let me clarify my question, Aaron. Thank you. If let's say that and I don't know how the math standards are going to go, but let's say that we pass these math standards and they go to integrated, then is the research going to change those standards? And if we go to traditional, is the research going to need to change those standards? And if they go to a hybrid, is the research going to change our standards? And I know how this sounds, right? Like we don't want the data because we don't want to change the standards. That's not true at all. I'm just trying to plan for the future, or look ahead and say what is the purpose of this, and are we too late in it? How is this going to help us?
Right. And yes, I wish we had a time machine to go back. Primarily, the idea is these questions were starting to be asked. Hey, is there a difference between the models? Are they the same? What states are doing what, so on and so forth? This is just an opportunity to get some empirical information and some good research behind it. What's it going to do to the standards? Again, I wish I had a time machine to go back and say, hey, look, we actually have the information. But as we move forward, it just makes the body of research available because it gets posted up on the UDRC's website, like we've done with other reports, where it's like, here it is. If we need to go back and find that and reference it, that's where we have it available. I don't know what the answers are because we haven't done the research yet. Obviously, to say, and I anticipate that one is not going to have an extreme dominance of impact, if that makes sense. Where when we look at it, I think we're going to see a blend like we see with a lot of our research where it's very nuanced. What does it actually mean as you go into it? So it won't be like a slam dunk, yes, we should go with integrated, or no, it's got to be, it's going to be a blend of interesting findings where we'll scratch our head sometimes and say, that's interesting and complicated. So, and like you said, it'd be great if we had a time machine and go back 2 years and say, hey, we should have done this, but we didn't. So that's why it's there, is because the questions are floating around. And as a group, as we discussed and prepared for this, it's like, this is actually something a lot of people are asking about, and we don't have the answer. So that's why we propose this.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So it looks like it's to just secondary because math is already integrated in elementary school. This is just looking at secondary 1, 2, and 3. Cole Kelly, Vice Chair Kelly.
Yeah. I was just going to make a motion that the committee recommends that the board approve the integrated mathematics research proposal and incorporate the additional research priorities identified by the committee into the final UDRC annual research agenda request.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion on the floor, and I'm wondering if we need to take out that phrase of the additional research priorities because we haven't added any. Right?
Yeah.
So the motion would actually just read, the committee recommends that the board approve the integrated mathematics research proposal into the final UDRC annual research agenda request.
Yep, that's fair.
Unless we've put forward ones earlier on, but I don't even think in that case we need it. We just need this one added. Member Booth?
I just wanted to speak in support of this motion. 21 years I've sat in this seat, not on the state board, but on a school board, listening to debates on mathematics standards and mathematics instruction and curriculum. It's been a hot topic forever. And more recently, well, not recently, probably in the middle of that time, then it became increasingly political. And as an educator who has had a lot of experience preparing educators at the higher education level to provide a good education to our K-12 students, I have never seen this as a political issue. I have wanted to have the data and have the best practice and the information back from best practice as we look at test scores and as we look at integration and all of the other issues that we're dealing with. I've wanted to have that information be the guiding force for change or for implementation. Because we are living in a time when this is very political. Just yesterday, I was accused on social media of pushing mathematics. I was accused of being responsible for the very poor mathematics that this particular individual was indicating was what we were dealing with in the state of Utah. And I just thought, there's so much information out there that would be helpful for this individual who's misinformed to know before they were making those kinds of accusations. I would just love to have as much information available to our parents and to our educators as possible, so that these decisions can continue to be made based on reasonable consideration of the facts, and that we could continue to provide or enhance that which we are providing for students, so that they are more capable and more effective in the use of mathematics in their careers and in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kelly. Oh, is your hand still up from the motion?
Yes, I didn't lower my hand. I'll do that now. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. There's a motion on the floor that the committee recommends that the board approve the integrated mathematics research proposal into the final UDRC annual research agenda request. Seeing no hands, members, please vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes unanimously with member Bogus absent. And we are hoping to try to end at 11:45 if possible, but we do have our last time here together. We have recognition of progress, achievements, and improvements, and also any information from USIMS or Utah grants that has been prepared for us. So let's turn to Deputy Jones.
Just for the recognition of progress, improvements, and achievements, of course, the next two information items speak to that, especially in the Utah grants lane and the USIMS lane. In other aspects too, as the superintendent mentioned yesterday, so staff are back in the office on certain set days, financial ops. So the transition back into the office is happening. So we're making progress there. And then too, I'm not sure if this is, well, I'll just say this is progress, but just for situational awareness or for the benefit of the group. So as of this point last year, we had roughly 30, 36, 39 fiscal note requests. We're already up to more than 60. So my point is with that is the achievement is we're keeping up or trying to keep up through the systems. And so kudos to Sam and Nestor and all of the staff really that have to provide the input on the fiscal notes with very short turnaround. So like if we get a note for a fiscal request on Monday that typically asks that, the LFA right now before the session starts Friday, but as we get into the session, those timelines speed up or become compacted quite a bit. So we are doing that. Yesterday too, you saw the correlation with Elise's presentation on the bill files, and then making sure that the board is seeing the fiscal note submissions for those numbered bills so that we can track those, as there's been concerns in the past about, well, what did we submit as far as what the fiscal impacts would be, and did that get, for lack of a better term, honored by the legislature, or did they change it? So for example, we may put into a fiscal note that change or that legislation would incur the need for half of an FTE or an additional FTE or something. So then does that get to the end of the row with the legislator that has that bill sponsor? So we are achieving and progressing in those processes too, leading into the start of the legislative session on January 19th. So with that, Chair, at your direction, we can turn it over to the other two summary information items, which should go rather quickly, and we should be able to finish in the next 5 minutes. So,
Great, thank you. So let's go ahead. It looks like we have Director Katrina Brinkley. Are you taking the lead on this one?
I do believe I am taking the lead on the USIMS PMR.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to share. Well, actually, Cami already has it up, it looks like. So our educator domain is working on finalizing a soft launch today for educator assignments to be going to a select number of LEAs for testing and verification. They've been testing for the last couple of months. This is our first soft launch into production for educator assignments that will be going live today. And we'll be doing that for 2 weeks, and then we'll expand it out to the rest of the state. And that will be as a result of needing to turn off some of the Cactus functionality because of some updates that needed to happen and couldn't. So because the RDS is going away, we are enabling educator assignments within USIMS, and that will allow our educators to do the things that they were doing in Cactus in USIMS now. As far as the finance domain, they're working on viewing budget and actual data. And working on some certified data validation. They had a great focus working group. Was it yesterday? Yes, today is Thursday. It's weird. They had a focus working group yesterday and showed off some of the reporting that they're doing and some of the accomplishments that they've made. They've been able to verify with a couple of our vendors that data is passing correctly through the API. And so they're working on getting the other few vendors verified. For the student domain, the one team is working on course grades and history, and the other team is working on these IEPs. For the IEPs, I wanted to clarify that this is legislatively required. We are required to allow an IEP to move from one SIS to another SIS by January 31st. So we are in progress for making that. That IEP will not be accessible to those of us at USBE. We will not have access to read it, to view it, to see what is in it. Our goal is that we will pull it up, encrypt it, and send it to the other SIS and never be able to see what is sent, just that it has been sent to and from them. And then we'll work on getting some assessments. We have the Apple that has been replaced with the stamp assessment that we need to get some assessment results done in here shortly. So that will be coming up next. And that is our quick update for you.
Great, thank you. Did you say when Cactus will be turned off?
So we are turning off the remote desktop support system. We're turning off a piece of Cactus that allows the educators to be able to get to it right now. So they will not be able to access the pieces of Cactus that they currently do. Those pieces will still be accessible to those here at USBE, but anyone outside of USBE won't be able to access it anymore. So those features will be in USIMS and essentially turned off for those outside of USBE. Cactus itself as a whole, we're gearing to hopefully turn that off in July of this year, but we'll see how that works as time gets closer.
Okay, thank you. I want our committee just to really understand this is such a heavy lift and so much work is going into this. And, you know, for a long while I had in my head, like, when are we going to be done? But the problem is, you know, I really need to have a mind change on this because every time another department anywhere in our agency wants to do something different, we have to change everything here in USIMS. And so I don't know that it's ever necessarily done, but it's an ongoing work. And we appreciate you and all the others who contribute to the process. Thank you for that.
That is correct. Thank you, Chair.
Deputy Jones, do we have Rebecca for a quick update on grants or no?
I am here and I'm happy to give a quick 1 minute update to get you out on time if you'd like to do so.
Oh, we can do a little more than that, but we'd love to hear you. Thanks, Rebecca.
Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the committee today. On the Utah grants development progress, the first item on the current development has been ongoing since our last time that we met on this agenda item in November. We're taking a little bit longer to go through the user acceptance testing and any refinement on each of these items because we have found in user acceptance testing and previous implementations that we've had a few bugs. So we want to be really, really careful in making sure that as we roll these items out, that they are as clean as they can possibly be. So the expectation is that mid-January, within the next 2 weeks, we should be rolling out each of these items. You'll notice that there are 3 refinement items on there. that are fixing bugs from previous rollouts. So again, we want to just be super careful that everything that we're doing is clean and ready for user consumption. So again, expecting that within the next couple of weeks. Also, we're continuing to work on development on 2 new items that are mostly internal to the USBE and our internal processes. We are going to be incorporating the child nutrition programs into Utah grants from a payment processing perspective. So everything will flow directly through the Utah grant system before it hits our financial system, and that will help us to implement a lot of the controls that we have in place within the Utah grant system, and also a lot of the reporting that we have available in Utah grants. It also facilitates the ability for us to have one system for our FFATA report. The FFATA report is the federal, oh, I have to look it up. I always call the FFATA report, the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act. It's the SAM.gov requirement that we report any subrecipient spending or awards, excuse me, to the federal government. So we just need to be transparent about who gets what money. We had 2 separate processes, one that was going through Utah grants, one that was directly going through our financial system. Those will now be combined into one process. And by being able to do this and incorporating some of the new changes in the FFATA reporting functionality, we'll be able to save what we're anticipating is about 40 hours per month for a staff member that currently reports that FFATA. So that's a significant lift and significant change for our internal processes. And then looking ahead, we have a lot of staff changes that we are recommending. Most of these changes that you're going to be seeing here impact our internal workflows and add efficiency to the agency by reducing the number of steps that are taken in the approval process, and also just kind of cleaning things up just a little bit to make us a little bit more efficient. So that involves payment request workflows, budget revision workflows, site visit workflows, etc. And then also be looking at some redesign in our transfer functionality between programs. So again, all of these items significantly impact our staff time that is taken in processing transactions through the Utah grant system. And then I will open up to any questions you may have.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Seeing no hands, I'll just add this to what I said earlier, to even about USIMS. You know, we listened to Representative McPherson say it's slow, but I just want to say this committee here is the committee that understands that. I don't know how Scott always says it, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, however that goes, but it is not and never was, here's a project, let's get it done. I mean, these are living, breathing systems, and every time there are legislative code changes, there are board rule changes, there are agency requests or field needs, we're changing and developing and coding and changing more. So it's a big, heavy lift, and we appreciate all those who are involved and board members who can sort of understand the complexity right here on this committee and speak with legislators and even other board members to help folks understand the living and breathing nature of what we're doing on a daily basis. So appreciate that. And again, I'm doing a quick sweep and I see no other hands. Thanks for coming today, everyone, and we'll see you in another meeting soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
We'll see you. Thank you.